Hi, welcome to Zigaju Review. Before we get started, go ahead and subscribe by hitting the subscribe button or the little watermark in the corner. Thank you. So there's been a lot of news going around for Sony's PlayStation. There seems to be a big issue with the way the leadership is running the company right now. There's been news from the company closing their PS3, PS Vita stores and not saying anything to PS Vita developers. The fear that some of those games, which are digital, might completely disappear. In other news, there's been issues with the PS4 internal clock battery, which might make it so you cannot play any games unless you are connected to the internet, essentially making your console useless unless it's connected to the internet. We have also heard statements from PlayStation leadership talking about how backwards compatibility isn't really something that they care about, because to loosely quote them, those games look old and ugly, and who will want to play those games? As I said before, I don't know. Why don't you ask Xbox and the backwards compatibility program, which seems to be very, very welcome by the community. And now we have a story from Bloomberg. The story from Bloomberg says that Sony's Corporation Visual Arts, or SVA for short, was a studio within the company that was created by top game developers to help out with bigger games within Sony Studios. So what they will do is, if there was a game that was having issues and they were falling behind on schedule, things like that, SVA will come in and pick up the slack and help out the studio meet that scheduled release dates. Have them do a remake of The Last of Us. The first Last of Us. Last of Us that came out in 2013, Last of Us. Last of Us that if you go right now anywhere and you see what that game looks like, the game looks amazing because it was created on the PS3 to look the best that it could look in that console. Not only that, but they had a remaster for the PS4. But the reason Sony decided to do this is because money. They have a show coming out for The Last of Us, a live action show, which means that when people watch a show, there's going to be renewed interest on the game. The plan was to, or maybe it is still, I don't know, make The Last of Us work for the PS5 with upgraded graphics to look more like The Last of Us 2, and eventually release it as a full package with Last of Us 1 and Last of Us 2 together on the PS5. It was also going to be cheaper to remake a game from 2013 than to remake any other game that they might have in the library. I mean, PlayStation has a huge library of games that they don't do anything with. Siphon Filter, for example, from the PS2, you can make a brand new Siphon Filter game or even remake one of those older games and sell it now, and people will rejoice. Have you heard of Perfect Dark Zero? People are waiting for that game. That game is from the Xbox 360. Property that exists. Microsoft is doing something with it, which Sony should too. Hello, Twisted Metal. There's many people that talk about Twisted Metal and how it would be great to have a new Twisted Metal. What's Sony doing with it? Of course, eventually this group of talented developers and creators decided that they wanted to create their own IPs and they wanted to stop being second fiddle to big games. Not only that, but they also didn't get any credit at all from the company or even acknowledge that they existed. Again, these are developers, these are creators. They want to work on their own stuff. They have their own ideas, they have their own ambitions. It's just the way it goes. A lot of these people don't get into developing games to help out other people with their ideas. A lot of these people want to create their own ideas, want to execute on their own ideas. And after a lot of work, a lot of effort, they were able to convince Sony of that. So the group was working on a project codenamed TIX, T-I-X. They said, go ahead and create the game that you want to create. Eventually, when the team was going to start working on the remake of The Last of Us, they were put on hold and they were moved to help out with The Last of Us 2, which had fallen behind on its release schedule. Again, the band was sent to play second fiddle to the big studio to help out what they couldn't complete. Of course, this created an issue for SVA, which was going to start working on their own game. They had to put their own game in the back burner and go help the bigger studio. Eventually, Sony said that once work on The Last of Us 2 was completed, the sum of Naughty Dog's employees were going to come and help out SVA with their new game. It wasn't bad enough that Sony decided to send employees from another studio to help out with a game that another studio was supposed to do on their own and prove their capability, but they also tied the budget of the game to Naughty Dog Studios. Technically, making Naughty Dog Studio the studio that was making this game. The team at SVA decided that this was too much for them and they left. And that is kind of where the problem relies. Sony is right now making some of the same mistakes that Microsoft did years ago between the Xbox 360 and the Xbox One launch. Microsoft focused a lot on first-person shooters and action games, to the point that people didn't really look at the Xbox 360 as a family console or a console that had a plethora of games. It was considered mostly a shooter console. If you want to play shooters, Xbox 360 is the place to go. Now, I'm not saying that that's what Sony is doing, but Sony right now is focusing a lot on big blockbuster games. Games that look beautiful and have amazing cutscenes and story and blah, 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 blah. Games that cost millions of dollars to make. Games that, if they don't sell well, if they don't review well, Sony kind of goes like, didn't work, let's move on. Kind of like Days Gone. Days Gone made a lot of money for Sony. The team that made Days Gone wanted to make a sequel. Sony said no. And the reason why they said no is because the development was too long for their liking and the reviews weren't as positive as they hope it will be. But if you still have a game that people have actually purchased, you made your money back, chances are that people are going to buy the sequel. And you're probably going to make your money back as well. But Sony, for some reason, is in this place where games have to hit like 80 and above review scores, and they have to make tons of money. And of course, I'm sure now, because there is an Uncharted movie coming out and Last of Us coming out, they're looking at games that can generate some sort of TV or movie license, which, okay, as a business makes sense 100%. You don't want to invest your money on something that is probably going to lose you money. You want to invest your money on something that's probably going to make you money. And not only make you money, but generate more money with other iterations of that one product. But that's not how games work. The reason why games become franchises or become huge money makers is because a lot of times games explore and try something different and new, and then they hit. Yes, not every single one hits, but they hit. And once they hit, you have a property that you can continue making things out of. With Xbox, Gears of War. When that game came out, the cover system was brand new. The whole running the way that roadie ran that they called at the time, I don't know if they still call it that, but when it came out, that's what it was called, was brand new. The whole idea of using one button for a bunch of different things was also new. Was supposed to be a simplification of what controlling a character in a game had become, which was very cumbersome. You have all these buttons. That was the idea. And yes, Gears of War was a blockbuster, and that's how it was launched and all these things, but still had innovation in it, right? That was the idea. Let us give you some gameplay innovation in a new game. And people flock to, not only because of the look of the game, but because of all those other little gameplay things that no one had seen before. Control. Control has everything. Looks, gameplay, story. But you also have smaller games that do the same thing. You have, for example, Minecraft. Minecraft is an enterprise on its own. When Microsoft bought Mojang back in the day for whatever $1 billion they bought, everybody was like, that's crazy. What are they doing? Microsoft has gotten that money back tenfold with everything they have done with that. And most people, I bet, were like, what is this game? Who's going to play this? It's so boring. You don't shoot, you just build stuff. Like, what's the point? And there you have it. Now, Sony is going the opposite way, just kind of like putting the blinders on kind of thing. They restructured their Japanese studios recently. One of the reasons is because they want to focus on blockbuster games and not focus so much on smaller games, especially not games that are only going to be viable in Japan. Again, as a business structure, business view, perfect sense. I want my product to be able to be purchased by everyone, not just by this amount of people, everyone, right? So yes, it makes sense. But again, games are a different type of entertainment. You play a game because of the gameplay, not only because it looks beautiful and the story might be okay and you have Hollywood writers, writing your script and stuff, like if that matters. There's plenty of crappy Hollywood movies, so that doesn't really make it a great game. That's what Sony is doing. They are focusing on, we want these games to be events every single time that comes out. This game is going to be an event. Not every game has to be an event. I don't understand why Sony isn't focusing on the things that have made them successful before. The reason that Sony is successful is not only because of their big blockbuster games, but also because of their smaller, niche, quirky games. Those games are part of Sony's history. Some of those games became franchises. I feel like Sony is making a lot of mistakes right now that, like I said at the beginning of the video, Xbox made. They are focusing and closing the amount of games that they're going to make, the type of games that they're going to make. They're alienating some of their customers by closing the door on older games and kind of refusing to have backwards compatibility on their brand new console, the PS5. And I feel like by doing this, they're falling behind on where the industry is going right now. And that seems to be Game Pass. Not to say that Game Pass is going to be the end-all be-all for gaming going forward, but if the rumors are true that, for example, Battlefield 6 is going to come out on Game Pass eventually, that is the beginning of AAA titles going to Game Pass. Not every single AAA title, but more of them going to Game Pass, which doesn't seem to be something that Sony is addressing. I mean, I'm assuming that Sony will have some sort of competition for Game Pass at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later. But it seems like Sony is sticking to their guns and being like, we are going to be a console maker that makes Sony games, which seems to be working for Nintendo. But the difference between Sony and Nintendo is that Nintendo's franchises are more accessible to people from children to grown-ups, versus PlayStation is more of a middle-of-the-road thing. Now, of course, PlayStation is selling the PS5 like hotcakes, and it continues to outsell the Xbox. But again, as I said in other videos, Xbox isn't in the business of selling you consoles anymore. They're in the business of selling you Game Pass. Hopefully, Sony will realize that and turn it around. Hopefully, they will change leadership that realizes that, you know what, backwards compatibility is a viable business. That making small, little, quirky games is a viable business. And not only big, tentpole, blockbuster games. What do you think? Do you think that Sony is making a mistake with the moves that they are making lately? Do you think that they can turn it around, or isn't something that they shouldn't be worried about? Let me know in the comment section. That's it for me. Go ahead and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. Go ahead and hit that bell so you can be alerted every time we have new videos. And thank you very much for watching.